Now, I guess if you've clicked on this today, you are a hardcore gardener. You are looking for garden content in winter, and we applaud you for that. But in all seriousness, it's coming up on the holiday season. So from Batavia and myself to you, we want to wish you a happy holidays, and we hope you get enjoyment and peace out of it, and you can spend time with your families. And we're going to do the same. So what we're going to do for the next couple weeks is we're going to be releasing the top 5 episodes that you guys have voted for. So yeah, you didn't even know you voted, but you did when you clicked on the podcast to listen to. So these are the top 5 episodes, and we're going to be taking this time, first of all, to spend with our families, take a little mental break, but also we're going to be planning our gardens. So we've got a lot to plan. We've got a lot to figure out. Myself, I start gardening in really start ramping up in February. Batavia's got a couple months after that, so I'm kind of jealous actually, but that's okay. So we hope you guys enjoy the episode, and we hope you have a happy holiday, a happy new year. And after these next 5 episodes, we will be back with some fresh content for you. Everybody enjoy. Thank you for your votes. Thank you for being with us. And as usual, come check us out in all our spots. All the links are below. And happy holidays. 20 days until the deepest, darkest days of winter show up. Are you ready? Well, we're getting our gardens ready, and that's what we're going to talk about right here today. All things gardening right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening and give the information out for you to be successful in your garden, whether it's your first or your last. We are your hosts, Ben, the Backyard Gardener, and
Batavia, the Front Yard Gardener.
One in the country,
One in the city.
Now get ready as we dig deep into this wonderful world of gardening as we learn to grow and grow for change. Are you ready for the darkest day of the year?
I think, is your mathing 20 days?
December 21st.
Oh, so people will hear this on like the 8th or 9th of December. So.
Oh, shoot. My bad. Wrong week.
You better get ready.
You better get ready because I'm doing math, and that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you can do the math. So how many days is that? 12, 13?
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So
yeah. You can blink and miss it.
Yeah, it's confusing to me. It's confusing to me because it's the darkest day of the year, which means in our area, that is, in America, we're the farthest away from the sun, but it's not the coldest part of the year yet for us.
Not for me either.
Right?
I don't put a whole lot of weight or, focus or concern into like the first day of winter, maybe because it's not something like celebratory as the first day of spring or the first day of summer.
Yeah.
It's like a sentencing or something. It's like I'm waiting until spring when I'm paroled. Like that's the exciting part. So yeah, you're right. For us, I think it's more like January, February is like the coldest of cold for Chicagoans and Midwesterners.
Yeah, for us it's January. But I do look forward to the solstice, to the first day of winter, because it's the shortest day of the year, and then from that moment on, we get more and more sun every day. So that's what I look forward to.
The only joy that comes from that for me is I have an old friend. We worked together for a bunch of years ago. And every now and again, I'll get random, like quite literally, I think he is the one that introduced me to the time and date site. He used to always send me like, all right, you have 18 hours of sunlight. It's going to be 16 hours of sunlight. It's got,
I might actually kill that guy.
Yeah.
Because all I hear is Batavia. I got this website, timeanddate.com.
I'm going to text him and ask, you gave me this site, didn't you? Oh, he's a good guy. For other reasons, but yeah, that too.
Yeah. So it's, we're getting very close to the, I guess we should call the calendar first day of winter, even though in my mind winter's already here. First frost marks winter, whatever. You've had your first frost.
Oh gosh, I've had multiple frosts.
So can I ask you a question, a personal question?
Yeah, sure.
Your first frost, how cold was it?
We hit right at 32 degrees, which
Really?
would be basically freezing, yeah.
So my first frost was 25 degrees, which is like completely unheard of. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm like, what is the deal here? What is going on? Global warming, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 25 degrees.
By the time this airs, we've gotten down to the low 20s. By the time this airs, we'll probably be like, we got our first frost right on November the 3rd. And between, like within that month, we've probably seen freezing temps around 10 or 11 days. Because it's, it's yo-yo season. Who says that? You say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've not gotten into 80-degree weather or anything since it's been dipping, but we've gotten back up to 50s, which is a big difference for your garden. So I have leafy greens that are absolutely frozen, thawing, perking back up, frozen, thawing, perking back up. So...
But everything is doing okay?
There are a couple of casualties, but they're okay. I'm giving myself a bit of, you hear me, the deep breath,
I did.
A bit of grace.
I felt like I should just lean back and just go for the ride.
There's some things that are still on my list that were on my list that, weather killed, quite literally.
Right.
And I'm moving past it. So.
Yeah, so... Nothing actually died from my weather yet because, we got down cold a couple of days, but then it's not supposed to get below like 45 for the next week. Mm-hmm. So it's plenty of time for stuff to rebound, but I'm struggling in some areas.
Yeah.
And I'm also flourishing in some areas. So it's interesting. And I also got all my seeds in for next year. Whoa.
What do you mean?
All of my seed order. They all came.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like planting seeds. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, yeah. I just went. I'm going all out. I'm growing my peppers for 5 months in the house.
I actually, speaking of, I need to make sure that I make this confession. I have, I think, 2 buckets that have pepper plants in them that are in the garage, that have been in the garage since just before the first frost, and. The garage gets cold enough where water can freeze in the coldest part of my winter. Remember we did that whole test?
Yeah.
But so far they're still lively, right? So.
What did you say?
They're still lively.
Oh, I thought you said it's still light-skinned, and I was like, what does that mean?
No. So I also have a container of herbs, which I really believe would have been fine outside, but they're just too beautiful to take the chance. So
yeah.
I'm like, in the warmer days, high 30s or 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm going out to the garage, cutting off some herbs. And, they keep well even if you put them in water in the house. So I'm pretty happy with my garden in its current state, other than it's a fucking mess. Like, I haven't had the strength, the energy, or the warm enough weather to get out there to do my final cleaning.
Right.
And I'm not letting it bother me, trying not to let it bother me. It's not going to bother me.
Well, let's go ahead and recognize the fact that it is December and you are happy with your garden in December.
Yeah.
That's 2 years in a row now.
Yeah.
2 years in a row. And have you harvested anything, or will you be harvesting anything in December?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, thank you for asking me, dear sir. So leafy greens, I'll still have, I still have a couple of roots out. I have a container or 2 with some beets and some carrots. So I'm sure I'll be pulling those out at some point in December. And then I have some kale that we're going to rock with it until it just it's limp and stays limp until spring. So I'll have that to harvest. And then based on what our calendar looks like, I'll be harvesting collards in December.
That's good.
So that's what you would expect though when you talk about like fall vegetables going into the last of fall.
So did you improve on anything from last year though? Because I remember last year you were struggling to get collards in December, which your goal was to have collards or have something coming out in December. So that was good.
Yeah, I ended up harvesting, I think, the last batch of collards just before Christmas last year, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back, and we'll talk about this in a few weeks, so I won't steal from that joy. With what I have planted, I wouldn't change anything other than, so I did a recent actually it would have been in November, a harvest of root vegetables, and I let some things just completely overgrow. So I was doing the calculation between days, and I'm like, 200 days? How am I'm pulling rutabagas out. Wait, no, what? Is that right? And absolutely it was right. So, yeah, and there was definitely a difference in kind of I won't say the health. I had to cut back the leaves, but taste a bit. I mean, they were overgrown, plainly put.
Your rutabagas?
So, yeah, the rutabagas. Yeah, I had some earlier in the season that were much better. So I have to think about ways to plant things I'm going to get to and use sooner. Like, we all love the big harvest videos and, you know, and pictures and all of that, and pulling a bounty of food into the kitchen, but there's some things that I just didn't harvest early enough. So that's the only thing I would change about kind of coming into fall, I think.
Right.
And the other thing is I am only harvesting like 3 types of leafy greens. So it's the chard that I still have, the collards, which it's a whole deal for me to do the collards. I am eating much more kale. So I would have liked more lettuce, but I didn't get a chance to start much of that. So here we are.
Yeah, my lettuce was just a shit show this fall. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's frustrating. I'm going to have to find a way to kind of overcome the hurdles of the heat and stuff like that, because it's like it just constantly bolts. So I do have plans against that, and I'm almost completely confident it's going to work. I know it's a brave statement, but I think it's just kind of the way to go. But let's do this. Let's take this break, and then we'll come back, and then we'll continue on. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Backyard Gardens podcast.
If you like what we're doing and you want to continue to support the podcast, head over to our Patreon page to sign up.
You can also make a one-time donation using PayPal. Both of these links are in the description.
With your support, we can continue growing and helping others in their gardens. See ya.
A lot of y'all asked, how can you help support the Backyard Gardens podcast? Well, we have been busy, and we have created a t-shirt line just for the gardener.
To visit our shop, go to the link in the show notes and check out the t-shirts and other goodies we have.
Now, these are super special t-shirts designed just for the gardener, so enjoy. Thank you for supporting the Backyard Gardens podcast, and we'll see you guys after the harvest. So what I've decided is, and I know you do this and most people do this, is they do cut and come again. Mm-hmm. You know, you cut what you need and you come back in a couple weeks and you cut some more. Yeah. And I think for lettuce, that's not going to work for me. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to work. I think I need to just grow it and cut it, and then just be done, you know. It kind of hurts my soul a little bit because I feel like it's much more efficient to cut and come again. But at the same time, like, I spend so much time waiting for it to get to that certain size that I feel like I just lose everything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. And we talked about this briefly, I want to say back in the summer, where, you know, maybe closer to the end of summer. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. I really like plants in the garden, and it speaks, you'll see it in everything I talk about when it comes to planting and harvesting and what's growing. So the rutabaga is the same idea. Like, I like to have food out there. And there's that wait. And especially when it's, you know, late spring, summer, even early fall, if you're trying to grow lettuce, for me, you know, you blink and it's bolting. And fortunately, I've had good luck where most of the bolted lettuce is not bitter. You know, so that's fine. But then it's you got to eat it now. You got to eat it now, right? So I think the cut and come again definitely allows to get more out of that particular plant. However, based on just the cost of the price of lettuce seeds and how many you get, I think I need to be okay with the idea of I'm pulling a plant and that's all I'm going to get from that plant because I pulled it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough for me because I've always done cut and come again. Mm-hmm. And it works fine for my kale and it works fine for my collards, but that lettuce, man, it does not work out well at all.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
God bless you. Last year, I started a lot more lettuce. So I transplanted a lot more lettuce out. And the timing, which I remember still trying to get a handle on, like what fall really looks like. I had some great luck in September, and I looked up and we had some like unusually warm weather. So some things that I didn't expect to bolt that I finally got to catch, right? They were finally growing, ends up bolting. Then we get to the point of like, remember how we go from it's summer, then we start to get cooler, then it's like cold, right? And then we'll get a little bit more warmer weather. And so the growing rate for some of the things, I direct sowed a lot of lettuce and like the baby leaves and things. And so I got in September great results from it. In October, things started to really get cool. And it's like these things have been growing now for 3 months. It feels like maybe it's more like 2 months.
Yeah.
And they look like they were just direct sowed, so. But all things considered,
Well, you remember a couple months ago, I basically gutted my garden and put all fall stuff in.
Mm-hmm, I did.
And do you remember I had some hesitation about that method. I had never completely just wiped the garden out and then just started over. And by doing that, though, I definitely think I made the right move because everything is right where it's supposed to be. My broccoli, I'm starting to get heads of broccoli.
Oh, good.
And it's not going to get hot. And now it will not get hot. We might get a 70-degree day here or there, but we're not going to get 80s or 90s or anything like that. So it's starting to head up. I have cauliflower that's wanting to head up. My cabbage is starting to head up. All of these things. I have rutabagas that are basically done at this point, and it was all because I gutted my garden, and started. And it was really hard to do that because some stuff was still producing, but on the other token, some things weren't. So it worked out. But it's being able to do it has been very nice to walk out there, and it I think it attributes to the success that I've had. And I've expressed on video and on here that this is one of the best fall gardens I've ever had. Mm-hmm. Was starting that in August, months beforehand. Mm-hmm. The trick is now the evolution is to find this happy medium where I can still be getting some food out while I'm growing other foods for the fall. That's going to be the trick. Because
gutting the garden and then replanting, you're back to a waiting game.
Yeah. Right? Because those 2 months I didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah. You've gone from, harvesting things every day to now I'm waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, to get the next set of crops. Yeah. I have 2 months to figure out what 2022's approach is going to be. And I had a really freeing moment of making decisions about 2022's garden. It's not like this is my forever garden. Whatever I do in 2022, I'm going to have to do forever in my life, for gardening. It's just what I'm doing in 2022. Because there is a part, and here is a aha moment. And I reserve the right to change my mind in 2 months. And 4 months, and 8 months, and 2 years. So this year,
and you will.
Yeah, absolutely, I will. 3 years for sure. So this year's tomato crop. So I love. For years and years, I've gotten green tomatoes off of the plants, and right before the first frost,
right,
and have had green tomatoes ripen indoors through now, through December, early December. And it's worked out really well. And this year's tomatoes, I got, pounds and pounds and pounds of tomatoes, right? And same idea, bring them inside, they ripen up, but they seem to be accelerated. I think maybe before I had them in the basement, which is a little bit cooler until I start getting on the heat. This year I had them upstairs, and so things ripen a lot sooner. Mm-hmm. Right. So I didn't get the satisfaction of just being able to eat as many ripe tomatoes kind of over the course of weeks. And then also I absolutely noticed a difference in flavor as they went from green tomatoes off the vine ripening indoors. Now, this is the trick, though. I'm struggling with now thinking back to see, was this tomato ever the tastiest? Was it just a year, or was this particular variety just wasn't that great, right? I have at least one variety which I can't place now, which is another conversation. That's like a store-bought tomato. Now, the benefit is I don't have to buy them from the store, but it tastes like a store-bought tomato, right? So I'm not going to change everything up based on that, but it does have me thinking. So this is the aha moment. It's back to the whole, what Ben's mission is to get me to grow less tomatoes. or step one in his 12 step.
Don't put it on me. Don't put it on me.
Step one in his 12-step plan is to get me to pull tomatoes out of the garden sooner. And then the ultimate goal, like the end game, is to have a tomato-less garden. Like that's the win for him.
That's my goal. That's my goal.
Yeah.
No tomatoes for Batavia in 2000 and whatever.
But if I could get my act together when it comes to preserving, which I don't have yet, if I could get my act together for that, then I wouldn't need as much time. God bless you. I wouldn't need as much time, like, to grow tomatoes. So let tomatoes grow in the garden. Are you tracking with me?
Yeah, I'm tracking.
Yeah.
Between my sinuses and everything else, I'm tracking.
Yeah, okay. Hold on. Stay with us. I still have like 10 more things to talk about. You got to stay here to listen. You see what happened there?
Yeah, I see what happened.
But anyway, my point is that if I could, it's helpful to still have tomatoes growing from like, late July harvesting through, October. That's helpful because it gives me time to basically manage that harvest, right? However, if I condense that timeline, meaning I'm pulling tomato plants out earlier, so let's say, mid-September. That's like a month and a half earlier than I normally would. The one we talked about, it gives me an opportunity to put something else in its place for fall. Like that's a sweet spot, right?
Right.
But then that means that my growing time for tomatoes has been condensed, and I'm going to have more tomatoes off the plant a lot earlier. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to do something with those. So anywho, that's a part of what I'm considering, like these next couple of months.
I think it's a good.
Starting seeds.
I mean, when I sit back and I look at how my year unfolded as far as, preserving and stuff like that, it's the same thing. I need to be more efficient at it like you are, or like you said you want to be. And what I need to really do is just say, it comes out. If I want to preserve it, I preserve it that day and just have the discipline to do it. Now, the truth is there's a lot of other things going on that don't allow me to do that, such as this. But in a perfect world, that's exactly what I would do. Say, okay, I got a pile of tomatoes. Boom. Let's get them out, Yeah. And honestly, I think, are you sitting down? Okay, yeah. I can see you're sitting down. That was just for dramatic effect.
Minutes, I'm going to be laying down. Go ahead.
I mean, if you think about it, like, I had 3 main producing tomato plants this year, and part of the issue that I had was I was pulling tomatoes and I didn't have enough to preserve at once to make a full pot. So really the situation is I need more tomato plants. So when I get that influx, I will have enough to just be like, okay, let's go can it and be done. Yeah. And also have enough spread out over my garden in different sections to where when, because where my tomatoes were this year, that bed will typically get less sun earlier because of the way it's positioned. If I grew tomatoes there, then I could just rip them out and be like, okay, it's done. I still have tomatoes in this other section. And then do it like that.
If you grew more tomatoes, in all seriousness, like that's and I was thinking about mentioning it, but I complain about this so much, I decided not to bless this episode with this complaint. But since you brought it up, here we are. That quantity thing, right? So it's the same. I mean, it's just like it was yesterday, starting to see the first tomatoes blush in July, and then starting to get a few here and there. But it's like going into September before I'm getting what I would look at it and say, okay, this is enough to process, right? And this is the balance I'm hoping to to, relax, relate, and release over these next couple of months and figure it out, because it's all undue pressure, because it becomes this whole thing. Like, now I need to wait until I get pounds of tomatoes to be able to process them, which is a trick. I have heard people just dump them in the freezer, get a couple at a time, dump them in the freezer, dump them in the freezer. A lot of things you're going to do with them, it's not going to matter that, they're frozen, then they thaw or whatever. So that's something to consider. Take them out, let them thaw, and then process them.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, just for the record. Okay. It's not my thing.
But that is an idea for some others that may be running into the same trouble.
Right.
But I really do believe, which, a part of it's kind of fun too, because it's a new goal, being a couple of years into starting seeds for me, being a couple of years into preserving food, figuring out that timing. And because I love a good project, I tend to make that kind of thing a good project. Like, once I pull out the canner, now we're ready to rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be days and days of it. And then it just takes me a while to jump over that hump, if you will.
Yeah. No, I feel you completely. And it's the same thing. I mean, it was like this year we went and we picked blueberries at a farm and we brought them back and canned them. And I mean, dude, I had like 15 quarts of blueberries and I still waited a week to can them. Like, what the hell am I waiting for? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had worse luck with my peppers this year, waiting a long time to process those, more so than tomatoes.
Yeah.
Because peppers give you a little bit more leeway, but I mean, we're literally pulling fresh food out of our gardens and then, I'm letting it sit.
Well, that's what happened to me. Is I went out there and I was like, all right, I'm going to pull my jalapenos for the year. And I pulled 75 jalapenos off my plants. I had just let them sit. Wasn't even worried about them. I was like, whatever, do what you're going to do. Like, I figured it was done. They were loaded. They were all like touching the ground. And it was only 2 plants. So I took them and I was like, all right. So I cut them and I said, David, he's like, yes, Daddy. I said, you want to help me clear off? He's like, of course, Daddy, I'll do anything. So we're sitting there and we're pulling off jalapenos and we leave them on the back porch in a pile. And I was just going to leave them there for a little bit. I left them there for 2 days in the middle of the back porch. Then I brought them inside and I left them inside for like 2 weeks before I decided to actually can them. And when I was canning them, I was like, okay, this is really close. Like, they're really starting to turn here. Like, you're messing up. So, and part of that too, for me, in that scenario, is it's the end of the year. There was going to be nothing else to can, so I was like, what's the rush, whatever. But it was really important to me because I didn't have any canned jalapenos to get me through the next year. Now I have 4 cans of jalapenos that should last me through the year. Yeah. With, until the fresh ones start coming off again. But
so when you I know you go through iterations of your garden design. Do you have like
That's such a polite way to say it. You left out the obsessed part. You left out the panic. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then the complete tossing it, and saying the hell with it. Do you do something similar as far as a plan for your preserving, or do you just know in your head what you all like and what you need more jars of?
Wait, you mean like what we're going to plan to preserve for the year?
Yeah. So do you have like, I know that there's you're planting knowing that you want to preserve X. I know that, but I'm saying like, apart when you said it was the last of the peppers, I did that with sweet peppers. It was kind of like, I had a hard time seeing like how many peppers I really had left on the plants before I pulled them. And I said, well, let me just wait to pull them all. And then once I see what I have, how much I have, then I'll decide kind of how I want to eat and how I want to preserve them. But that was a bad move, right? Because then I ended up with so many mixtures of ripe versus not ripe. And I let them sit. And now, basically, I mentioned this before, everything is kind of crinkly, which again, absolutely usable. I made this great pasta dish yesterday and I had like completely crinkly bell peppers. Added them to the dish. Well, I roasted them in the oven, added them to the dish, and delicious.
They're fine. Yeah. You're steps away from losing that pepper.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's interesting you asked that. And this is a whole new thing. We can talk about in the future. But yeah, I definitely know like, hey, we want to get a little bit more of this in the pantry. We want a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But then what'll also happen is we'll also have stuff left over. So we'll have stuff that kind of compiles year after year. Yeah. And so we need to be aware of that. And I try and can everything a certain way once and then try it and then make a decision for the next year. So we like last year, so 2 years ago, when we had all the butternut squash coming up, we canned butternut squash. Interestingly enough, they didn't seal even though I checked them, and they rotted in my pantry. So I took that as an omen and said, I'm not canning those anymore. It's kind of a bitch to can them too.
Yeah.
And then we did carrots this year. So like just chopped up carrots whole. So we're going to try those out and see if we like them. But you know, we have our staples that we like to have canned and frozen and stuff. And then we just kind of, if we can get more, great. And if it also goes off of how much we have left over. So like right now we have blueberry and strawberry jams, and they should last us for a fair amount of time. We'll probably run out, I would say March, we'll probably run out of our jams completely. Maybe April. And then like our tomatoes, we should be good for the year with tomatoes because we also supplement those with stuff from the grocery store.
Yeah.
So there's always that as well. Spaghetti sauce, hell, my wife used it all up already. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, we'll make it last, but whatever. So I think we have like one more can of that. So if you look at that, then it's like, okay, next year we really need to focus on making more spaghetti sauce, which means we need more tomatoes for that. So yeah, we do definitely do that, but it just depends on how much we consume it. So, and it's such a learning process too, because I can't tell what they will or won't like.
Yeah, definitely is a learning curve. And there are a couple of things that I enjoy, like if I have it out, like at a restaurant or something, then I try it and it's kind of like, so they're definitely using a different recipe. I tried pickled cauliflower this year, and I'd gotten like, you know, some order from takeout from some Mexican restaurant, and you know, I love pickled jalapenos, right? And so they had given me the little bitty container and it had mostly cauliflower. I'm like, oh, this is great. And so I'm like, oh, and I bought the cauliflower from the store. I'm like, oh, I'll pickle it. And so I came back maybe a month and a half later and tried it. I'm like, yeah, this is very vinegary. You know, like I followed the directions, you know, this is the, like, okay, so now this is what's safe. And I'm like, that ain't the taste I'm going for. But anyway, I think it's, it definitely is that whole, what I really enjoy versus trying to try something new. Same thing with growing food, you know, so I was just curious. By the way, I made my first ever homemade pizza. Like, I mean, I bought the dough, but I made my first ever homemade pizza using some ingredients from my garden, including the sauce, which is pretty cool. That's
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Homemade pizza is amazing.
Yeah.
Do you don't have a bread maker, do you?
No, I do not.
Dude,
I'm not.
One of the top 5 things to get if you start making your own bread.
Nope.
Best, yeah.
I'm going through this whole reorganization project. I'm in year 4 of it.
I knew you were going to say something like that. I was just waiting.
This year's version is... shit. I'm not even going to go back and recount. It absolutely is year 4 of it. So this year's version had me move all of the food products out of... it's basically this little closet that's off my back door, but it's right across from a bathroom. And so I made it into like this little pantry. I know a pantry technically is something you walk into, but whatever. So I'd had food and things stored there, like canned goods and things, you know, dry goods stored there. And I never really liked the idea of coming out of this bathroom and like basically behind this door is food. Never really floated my boat. But it also allowed things to hide from me, right? So I have now moved all of my kind of appliances there, which I like much better from the look, the feel. Yeah. There's so many pots and pans and, you know, food processors and blenders and all this crap. And I'm just like, I will buy something else when something stops working because I have no more room to store it. Right. You know? So, yeah, I don't have room for a bread maker. Sorry.
Well, you know what we do is we go through and with those things, and if we don't use it often, we get rid of it. Like we don't, because I mean, those, you can get appliances out the wazoo. Yeah. And so we kind of, you know, but bread maker we use a lot, but I digress. I got to tell you something. I put up my low tunnel.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems to be doing okay. we'll see. I have plans for it. So it was funny when you said, when you do your first couple versions of your garden, like that totally made me like, because I made a low tunnel, I had to completely throw out my entire garden plan for the next year and restart because it allows me to do other things inside of it. So it's very interesting. We'll see how it goes. I didn't put super thick plastic on it, but I don't think I need super thick. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, totally. Yeah.
So,
At this point, it's because of what I have still in the garden, it's less about protecting those vegetables now. I mean, I've taken some steps. There are a couple of videos out there for me where I've basically I've covered this, a lot of towels and plastic and all of that. But it's more so getting a head start on next year's garden, which we'll talk more about next year. So, low tunnels and all are going to be important to my next year's spring garden, I think.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do a video on it just to say I have. But and that was one of the things I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't because it's so late in the year. But then I'm like, well, it's perfect for spring because that's really like when it comes down to it, that's honestly why I set it up. And if it works out good, I'll add more to my space completely. It's kind of a bitch to get in and out of, though. I will say that. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, that's the real.
I'm not a big fan of that situation at all. But
securing the plastic in the way that you and I are using them with the PVC pipes for hoops, right? Are you using PVC pipes or did you use the?
Hell yeah, I'm using whatever's cheap.
So, and absolutely is very cost effective. It's a pain. It basically keeps my vegetables locked away. And I was in the kitchen a couple of mornings ago, and I saw plastic blowing in the wind. I'm like, well, I screwed the pooch on that. Like I did.
Yeah, that's how it was for me. Because we weren't supposed to get a frost, and then the first frost was 25, and I was like, well, I've got to cover this. So I went out there and I hooked it up, and I was like, I couldn't even find plastic. Like, there's no plastic around.
Yeah.
So I actually ordered 6mm online, and I ended up going to my local Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever, and getting like a 3.5 mil. And I was just like, look, I'm just going to drape it on right now. Like, whatever, just, and everything's fine. I mean, you go out there now and it doesn't even look like, I may not have even needed to cover it. But when it comes down to it, we had talked, I don't know if we talked on the show or if we had talked off air about it. Where I was talking about starting seedlings in and basically putting them out when it's still freezing for some stuff like cabbage and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was off air.
That was off air? Okay.
Yeah, that's what my log says. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it is, but either way, so that's what in my area in February, it says that you can plant out like a number of vegetables. So it's like cabbage, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, all that stuff happens within like the first week of February to the second week of March. And that being said, like my whole problem was, well, if I start it inside and then I go to harden it off, it's going to die because it's, and so as I was reading up on it, which this is not easy information to find, may I add, it was you start them in a cold frame. And then you plant them out. And I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So that's the idea with this low tunnel is that, so it's like I can plant my carrots earlier. I can do all these things and kind of maybe see if it'll get a jump start. And this year I have one low tunnel to see if it's a test. So, if it works out great, awesome. And if it doesn't, screw it. I've got a little bit extra plastic. I'll cover stuff with it in the spring or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah, with a home, there's always a need for plastic.
Yeah.
A wise person once said.
Well, and if never mind. You could wrap things up and dispose of them, I guess, but I didn't want everybody.
It's so sad that I absolutely was thinking that. But I binged on a lot of like toxic TV this weekend. So, the disposal of things was right at the top of my queue list. So as a shout out to all of my indoor plant lovers, just to note, I am back on like the triage of my indoor plants. There's some things that are in hospice And there are some things that, have flourished without my attention. And there are some things that are in between. So I am not going to do a big plant purchase like I've done the previous winters. I got enough going on here right now. So I am going to be nursing some things back to health.
Oh, Lord. Here we go. Yeah, I left my one indoor plant outside and it got frozen, so toast. But, it happens. I ended up getting a Christmas cactus, too, so we'll see if I can keep that one alive. My house gets no sun whatsoever, so...
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's tough, but there's things that I can do. But, anything that we're doing, that I do in my garden or my yard or anything, I always try to have it, like, multi-purpose. So I'm trying to figure out how I can use, the low tunnels for multi-purpose, like different, I haven't figured that piece of the puzzle out.
Is the space you have them, could that be the space you plant squash next year and cover it?
That's what I'm trying to decide on, yeah. So, and as of right now, also, I mean, it's easy to move. You know what I mean? Like, you can move it, and it doesn't take but I was surprised at how little time it took to set it up.
Yeah, there are a few beds in the backyard garden that I just move the hoops around, back and forth. I'm trying to decide for the winter. So the cheat for next year, so let me jump ahead. I am going to cover some beds. They're like 17 raised beds now. Shout out to Ashley, which by her account, there would be 999 based on how we normally communicate about this.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm very much taking your approach. I think I had one covered in plastic last year because I had some containers inside of the bed. And remember, I told you that the soil inside of that bed was workable much earlier than the rest of the soil in the raised beds that were uncovered. Right. So it was still frozen. I don't remember the timing of it, but I want to do that on purpose. Coming into this winter, where I'm going to pick out a couple of beds that I'm going to cover with plastic for the winter, not to grow in over winter necessarily, but to kind of protect it from the freezing temps. And when I say that, it means like it's not going to be completely thawed underneath, but it should thaw out earlier in the spring than the rest of the beds.
Right.
So I'm going to pick a couple of those, and it needs to tie into, and I still have a bit of time to do that. It needs to tie into the beds that I plan on planting in early next spring. So we may be venturing into the front yard for that because one of my good friends told me to create a sundial years and years ago, like monitor how much sun is, coming into your garden. I'm like, I ain't doing all of that shit, so this year I created a sundial. No, but I definitely did. I was much more in tune with it seems pretty obvious when I say it now, but how much more sun the front yard garden gets this time of year compared to the backyard garden.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to be this way for quite a while. So I need to take advantage of that, so when we talk about the spring of 2021, most of the things I planted were in the backyard, which they did fine. But if I want to get a head start, if I want to basically get spring in, rotate it, move on to summer, I need to plat out those areas. So the plan is, and this is the plan because again, I'm still tired, right?
Yeah.
While it seems like it's just a little bit of work, which technically it is, I need to pinpoint a time before the snow really comes down. That's also another key. I don't have to get to it before the snow hits, but I want to get to this before the snow gets heavy. So anywho, that's something that, kind of my closeout activities for the year. It's something that I'd like to do.
I am so blessed that I don't have to deal with snow anymore because I remember that feeling of all right, the snow's coming and when it comes, that's it. You have a definite cutoff timeline that that's it, it's over. And I can, because right now, as you're talking, I'm like, okay, because, when you were saying the front yard gets more sun this time of year, I was looking at the wild garden and two things. I thought, you remember how I said always, I get sunlight issues there? Well, now I'm not so sure that it's sunlight issues and not just soil issues that are hindering some plants. But because it gets a lot more sun this time of year or gets sun earlier, which is super important when it's, cool out. But I was just thinking to myself, like, I need to go out there, I need to build those beds out there, blah, blah, blah. But I don't have a time frame. My time frame is really, March before I need to get. Now, I hopefully I'll get it done. And I usually about after the Christmas season, everything, I start to get super antsy.
Yeah.
And then I'll just go out there in January and start knocking out projects. So that's definitely probably going to happen in January. But at least I don't have to really worry. And if we do get snow, in 2 days, it'll be gone. So I'm super blessed.
Yeah, I mean, the face that I had, I could see myself here.
I know.
And that was not
it hurt.
cute, but I felt every bit of the face I was giving.
Yeah.
Because I had images of, again, I've lived in Chicago all of my life. I am, on this episode, I will not be the one that complains about the weather and the place she's chosen to live in.
Yeah.
Not on this episode. But it's not the snow flurries. It's not the couple of inches of snow. For me, historically, it's always been that period of it snows on top of snow on top of snow. So then you're waiting until the snow melts. So this is moved forward to like February, March, and you start to see the edges of the grass, but there's still a lump of dirty gray snow.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I look forward to the least.
I mean, when I was in Massachusetts, it was the same thing. It was like up from like the end of January all the way to March was nothing but snow after snow after snow, and that was it. But yeah. But you say you're not going to complain about it, which I think is good, first of all. But I think you find ways to embrace it, and I think that's where my philosophy is like, take it easy in the winter, chill. I think it came from that because you didn't have a choice.
Something that I realized just recently, but I've pretty typically done. Remember how I said that I felt like I had a chance to stop and enjoy the food from the garden, like really enjoy it. It's less about the garden work that's keeping me from it. It's more about, I just prefer to cook. I cook more when it's cold, when I'm kind of shut in, than I do in the summer. Right. I'll grab something really quickly, or it'll be something I eat really light. Like I'm not making, 6-course meals in the summer. And so that's important because it also impacts what I grow. Right. Which I didn't realize until very, very recently, like these last couple of weeks. But it's a good thing. It's a good kind of moment for me to say, oh, okay. So I really want vegetables that are coming out of the garden in, October going into November, and then, kind of earlier spring, because I'm really in the mood to manage them, cook with them, prepare them, enjoy them. Right. Obviously summer for me, just in general in life beyond the garden, is much busier. Right. So it's kind of like you're taming the wilderness, in the garden. So that's I'm not going to steal from that joy of next year when we talk about our plans.
Yeah, don't do that yet. Don't do that yet. Yeah. Let's give it a break.
Just those words will impact what 2022 looks like.
Leonard will roll the tape next year when it's time.
Roll the tape. No one ever says it that way. I'm not sure why I chose to. But
I think that everybody should say it that way. It's great. Roll the tape. I can't get my voice as loud as you or as high. Look, we're sitting here talking, and I almost forgot. It is time for somebody. I don't know whose week is it.
I don't know. We're gonna rock paper scissors it.
All right, let's rock paper scissors it. Ready? Rock paper scissors says shoot. Damn. Rock paper scissors says shoot. All right.
Got it.
So we'll be right back with the recipe of the day. One of the most common questions we get asked is, what do we use in our gardens as far as products? Well, we have an Amazon list below that if you go to, you can see all of the products that we use and like and recommend, and you can buy them. And if you do, you support the podcast at no extra cost to you. So check out the link below for our Amazon store and help support the podcast and enjoy your gardens.
All right, so we're going to make this brief. We're just going to do one more bit of kale because we can. It's still in my garden. I'm still growing it. So this is untraditional for me. It's a kale Caesar salad. Any kind of kale will do. I'm using curly kale, and my tone just changed because I know the guy on the other side of this microphone is all like Toscano, Tanzania.
Hey, we all have our preferences.
I've mentioned a bunch of times I actually enjoy salads in the winter. So while it is a bit colder, this still warms my heart. So you're going to start off with a handful, 5 or 6 for a single person, leaves of lettuce. Chop them very, very finely. I'm not going to massage them or anything. I'm going to focus on cucumbers, if you have purchased them. If not, don't worry about it. Croutons, which I also made for the first time. I can't believe I've been buying croutons all of these years. I mean, it's the easiest thing ever to make. And there are a lot of calories because I basically ate a lot of bread with olive oil before I put them in the oven. But anyway, so cut the kale up finely, get some croutons, store-bought or made. Something crunchy is what I like. That's the reason why I leaned on the cucumbers. Some type of creamy dressing. So Caesar is my choice. But you want that thick. Add a little bit of avocado to it. Make it a little bit creamier. Salt and pepper to taste. And that's it. I'm not doing anything special.
Super easy. No.
Caesar kale salad.
Yeah. I went out to eat the other night and I had that. For some reason, the restaurant we went to had that, but I also put a piece of salmon on top.
Hard-boiled eggs. That's the piece I forgot.
Hard-boiled eggs?
Eggs, yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of eggs in there. Get you some protein in there as well. It's good stuff.
There it is. There it is. I love Caesar salad. So
have it for breakfast as well. Break the rules.
You know what? I might do that just for you.
In
might
my
be part
mind,
of
the
my New Year's resolution.
Egg makes it breakfast worthy.
Sure. Why not? Live your best life, Batavia. So
I'm kind of making up that last part though. Just so you know.
So I think this episode is a mixed bag because there's a lot going on in our gardens at the very end of the year. But
which is super cool, man. I have really been gardening for years with the hope of this to be able to talk. Well, I mean, I do enjoy a good break, some downtime, but I've really wanted to be in November and December harvesting food for my garden. So this is, again, I think we said year 2 or 3 of being able to do that. Let me ask you something before we wrap up.
Ask away.
So this is a slower time in the garden for you, right?
Yeah.
Even with your spectacular fall garden, and his fall garden is the fall garden of dreams, right? It's like really, really impressive. Job well done. But
Thank you.
Summer is a bit more, and spring is a bit more challenging, more work. I really feel like gardening is a hobby now. In this particular time versus 4 months ago, 3 months ago, it really felt like a job.
Yeah.
And not in a negative way. So my question is, let's pretend if you could get the amount of food that you desired, right? Would you prefer to have this version of your garden and kind of how you interact with it now, November, December, or do you really want to be in the thick of it in May, June, July?
May, June, July.
Okay. Why?
I like being out there. I like being busy. I like troubleshooting. I mean, that's really one of the main reasons why I like to garden so much is because it's always something. And I mean, I might complain about it, but when it comes down to it, like, I like, what's that bug? How can I get rid of that? Why is this not producing? Why in the hell am I getting 452,000 tomatoes all at once? Like, why did my jalapenos give me 75 jalapenos all at the end of the year? Why is it that every year my pepper plants get productive at the end? I like that kind of stuff. So, I like, and I also like the heat, to be honest. That's a big part of it for me too. My big thing this year, as I'm trying to crack the code for watering for next year, I think I need to make some adjustments, and so that's, but I like that stuff. What about you? You like the low downtime, don't you?
If I had to choose one or the other, I would choose the earlier part of the year, right? If I could only have one. The reason why I like the downtime is because of how taxing the earlier part of the year is.
Yeah.
Right. But I would also choose your May and your June, July, and primarily because I get to spend much more time, based on where I live, much more time in the garden. And it's really a place I enjoy. But if I had to choose one reason, it's how much the garden changes over those months versus September, October, November, for example. Right? It changes in those months, but it really is it's kind of downward slope, right?
Yeah, I feel you.
So yeah, it's everything that I want the garden to be, kind of, more, spiritually, if you will, happens in those kind of summer months.
Right.
So, yeah.
And, I think also if it comes down to summer or winter garden or fall, whatever, spring, if you ask me which one I prefer the food. Oh, man, that's tough.
Oh, I wish you wouldn't have asked this question.
I don't think I am. I think I'm going to pull back.
Yeah,
I'm going to pull back. Because it's just it's too much. I think I just need to give it a rest because that's a tough question, and
it's not a tough question for me, but I'm not ready to face the answer.
Yeah, it's not a tough question for me. It's a long answer for me because
Gotcha.
It's actually pretty in depth. But look, I'm gonna leave it at that. So
Leonard, new 2022 episode.
Activate it. Yeah, he's got it. He's writing it down right now. That's right. Because if Leonard doesn't write, he's fired. That's how it works. He's not allowed to type.
Leonard is like, you ever used to watch Murphy Brown? And she used to fire
way back in the day
secretary like every show.
Yeah,
it's like Leonard gets fired every show.
We still
and
love him.
He's his
though.
own replacement. Yeah.
But this was, I guess, this year we brought back our garden updates in the spring, and we didn't really do anything, we didn't name them garden updates, but within these conversations, I feel like there is so much useful information. So, as we go through to, we'll call it our rest period of the year for our gardens, these conversations, I don't anticipate them totally changing. I mean, we'll have different topics, but there's still like these garden talk sessions are so important because we really flesh out a lot of different things. I think.
How many times in the last 6 weeks have one of us said, somebody needs to press the record button. We need to be recording this conversation we're having.
So many times it's ridiculous. One day I'm going to record our conversation on the phone. No, because then I can get sued or something probably. I don't know. Is there laws against that?
As long as you edit out the times that I have to put you on hold to go to the bathroom or to shoo a cat away or to answer the door for a neighbor or something. As long as you edit that part out, I'd be okay with it.
But everybody, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. We have a lot going on in our gardens. It's such a quiet time of year. It's amazing to me. And it's amazing to me that Batavia has so much going on in her garden because she is literally almost 5 miles away from the Arctic Circle. So it's cold up there. Okay. But thank you so much for listening. Check out all of our links below. Amazon stores. Become a patron. Help us out to keep this show going. And until next time.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you want to see what we're up to or just stay up to date on all the announcements regarding the show or anything gardening, then you can follow us on Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV.
We love seeing what you guys are doing, so use hashtag BYG Podcast in your posts, and we'll be sharing your gardens with the Backyard Gardens community.
And check us out on YouTube at Backyard Gardens, where we will post this show, all of our other shows, clips, and then also some gardening tips and just gardening entertainment. And you can see us at our website at backyardgardenstv.com. But that's it for today's show. So help us as we learn to grow and grow for change. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. We'll call this one a wrap.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.